Okay, so we're here with Claire Hayes from the ASCP. How are you doing, Claire?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you, Joe.
Thanks for joining us. So you're here to talk about the COVID or compliance campaign that you've kicked off. Can you explain a little bit about that for me, please?
Yeah, sure. So right across the UK, there are social landlords that provide nearly 5 million social housing homes, and they're now operating in a complete new unknown world, one where existing compliance legislation is at complete loggerheads with the COVID virus itself. In line with gas safety regulations, the gas safety installation and use regulations, specifically regulation 36, within 12 months, landlords must service and safety check around 4 million gas appliances every year. So the scale of this issue is almost incomprehensible. It's presenting landlords with what really can only be described as a new world trilemma, and it really is the impossible trinity. So that's the contagion of the COVID virus itself versus a duty of care under the Health and Safety at Work Act to their tenants, to their staff, many of which are their own directly employed heating engineers, also to their contractors. And that's against compliance that really is old world regulations that was set out before the COVID virus was here. And so landlords, heating engineers, managers find themselves grappling with the right thing to do for our society at large. This is causing hundreds of organisations to heating engineers and tenants excessive issues with the current climate, and this is why we've launched this campaign for urgent change. So the Association of Safety and Compliance Professionals, along with Corgi, have successfully worked with the government previously to bring in positive change to the industry with the introduction of Regulation 36A. Now that's about servicing the boilers flexibly on an MOT style basis. And this is now another common sense approach, a common sense issue that we really feel we must fight for.
I think you touched on some of them there, but can you summarise some of the key issues for us, please?
Yeah, sure. So we've lobbied the government to relax the 12-month deadline by a minimum of 3 months and a maximum of 6 months. And this is what the DVSA announced on the 25th of March for car MOTs, which were extended for 6 months. Now, they were really hot on this one. They were very quick to react with what's a really logical conclusion during this pandemic. Now, there's about 28 million more cars on the road than boilers, and they're inherently more dangerous. But the similarities of the two scenarios are really quite obvious. So I see no reason why we can't follow suit in this sector. So there's 6 key issues really, and that's gaining access to people's homes. Now, that's always a challenge at the best of times, and something landlords work incredibly hard to achieve. But now we've got tenants who are self-isolating, who are shielding, and there's a real nervousness allowing anybody quite rightly into their homes. We've got a lot of elderly tenants as well, and they're shielding, and the government have already restricted their social interactions. And they're feeling, at the moment, like they're being hassled by engineers, and it's putting them under considerable pressure. And we mustn't forget as well, another practical consequence of this is the engineering population itself. They're also reduced, and we've heard some of the statistics is around a 50% drop in engineer availability. And in addition to that, the landlords themselves have less resource as well internally to manage what is an absolute nightmare of an administration function. That's before we even get started on things like PPE. Globally, there's a scarcity. So, that's really got to be focused on our frontline NHS and carers, and there just isn't the PPE around for our engineers to work with. So understandably, compliance teams are still driving urgently to gain access, and they're going against the government's guideline to prevent the spread of the disease. It really is an absolute nightmare for all concerned. And there's a 6. Clearly, the longer this goes on, the bigger the potential for cross-contamination will be, and this is directly contradicting the advice of the Chief Medical Officer. And that's against a consequential backlog of clearing this all up. Now, it's going to take 6 months, optimistically, before we can get back to business as usual before COVID struck.
How big a problem do you see this is?
Well, disturbingly, in the next 8 weeks alone, I estimate there will be about 700,000 regulatory routine gas safety checks due. Now, astonishingly, that could result in around 2 million unnecessary social interactions taking place. That's just in 8 weeks. So these numbers really are alarming, and they're only going to increase.
So what sort of thing would you like to see in practical terms?
Okay, so what we're actually asking for then is all non-emergency work is suspended, and that includes routine gas safety checks. There's a short-term extension for 3 to 6 months, although we'd certainly like the 6 months to deal with the backlogs. And then, again, practically, I'd like to see a period adopting a light touch approach when things do get back to normal to help. That's particularly by the regulator of social housing, who regulates landlords and their compliance with regulations for the remainder of 2020 to safely clear up backlogs. Then, of course, no landlord that I know of would ever want to neglect their statutory duties and the safety of their tenants. So housing providers will still visit any emergencies, any repairs, or certainly anything that's considered dangerous. And then additionally, I would add to that if a resident was to request a safety check that was due, then as long as it's practical to complete and a risk assessment has been carried out, that the landlord would undertake that work as requested by the tenant.
What sort of response have you had from the industry for the campaign?
Well, the response has actually been overwhelming, as I suspected it would be. So from the landlords we've had sign up to our campaign, they represent over 1 million properties. So this is huge. We've also had about 17 members of parliament. There's about another 20 letters from various members of ours who've sent our letter out to their MPs to lobby the government to say this needs to be looked at. This is dangerous. Now, those numbers are growing daily, and it shows this as an industry-wide issue that is recognised right across the UK.
And how do social homes compare to private homes?
Well, it's a really interesting point. And I must stress that gas appliances found within social housing properties, they're known to be some of the safest in the land. Now, that's largely due to the fact their boilers are serviced and safety checked every single year by a competent, qualified, gas safe registered engineer. Landlords also have regular replacement programmes, and repairs are carried out in a timely manner. Many of them also have carbon monoxide alarms. So generally, the state of the situation is much different than privately owned homes, and they probably present a far greater risk in this respect. And that's just due to the fact that the compulsory servicing and safety check just doesn't exist for private homes.
And what are the next steps for the campaign?
So despite attempts to reason with the HSE, and not just from myself, but from many other bodies within the sector, other than advising on some basic steps and some reasonable steps the landlords should take, they've refused to really take account of these unprecedented circumstances. Instead, they've put the responsibility of this impossible trilemma unfairly in the hands of the landlords, and they're holding them to account when they've not been able to carry out the safety checks. And that's at a time when our homes, our private homes, are not having routine gas safety checks carried out. So there's a level of hypocrisy here as well, in that all of the gas safe register who deliver the HSE remit have postponed, understandably so, their face-to-face inspections of gas engineers during the Contagion.
And how can people support? How can people get involved with the campaign?
Okay, so undisputedly, there is a conflict here with the government's mandate around essential work and limiting person-to-person contact. The government's asking everyone to make sacrifices in order to spread the slow of this treacherous virus and to protect the NHS and keep people safe. So now we're calling on the government to better understand what's at stake and to do the right thing. Stop sitting on the fence and amend legislation as the DVSA did for car MOTs. We'd also, anybody that would like to join in our campaign, because I know this touches the hearts of many people they can certainly contact us at the email address, which I'm sure you'll be happy to provide, Joe, and they can sign up to our campaign as well.